Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you have still some energy left for the last presentation of the day. I'm here to talk about location-based mobile games. My name is Teemu Harju, and I started in mobile games in 2011. I joined a then fairly new company called Grey Area. We were making the very first location-based game ever, I would say, called Shadow Cities. It was a very ambitious and very pioneering product at that time. It didn't end up being a huge success, but it's a kind of proud thing for us. We really made the first location-based game. Since then, I worked in various different mobile gaming companies, and quite recently founded a new gaming company where we're back making location-based games again. That company is called Shipyard Games. We founded the company like a year and a half ago with some friends I knew back from Grey Area days. We're currently a 6-person studio working here in Helsinki. And simply put, our vision is to build a new genre of location-based games. We really believe in location-based games. Pokemon Go really kind of made location-based familiar for everybody, and we truly believe that there's an opportunity for way more cooler gaming than the location-based games offer at the moment. I'm going to talk about things that we've learned while we've been doing this. 15 minutes is not a long time for explaining how to make location-based games, but I try to focus on what I believe is the really most important things. As an example, I'm going to use our yet unreleased title. We're making a location-based city building game, and you're going to see screenshots of the game, and at the end of the presentation, I hope I can show a short video clip. It hasn't yet been released. It's been in beta testing, quite closed beta testing for now, and we're hoping to open it to a bigger audience as soon as possible. This here is definition of what a location-based game is in Wikipedia. It's a pervasive game in which the gameplay evolves and progresses via player's location. And I would claim that you have to be pretty careful when deciding what kind of factors you actually want to tie to the player's physical location and how much progress you actually want to tie to real-world location. If the gameplay changes quite a lot, let's say game is completely different in Helsinki and in New York, the complexity and let's say the design really gets out of hand quite quickly. And one good point also is that commonly players don't really move too much, even though they are playing location-based games. So I would claim that they are playing up to 2 or 3 different locations mostly. And if the game would be very different in very different locations, it kind of a big part of the gameplay would be left out of many players. We kind of believe more in that location-based game should in a way blend the real world with the game world. It doesn't necessarily have to be your physical location, as long as the game is so recognizable that the place that is depicted in the game is really familiar to you, so that you know where the game is played, and everything in the game kind of becomes way more meaningful to you when they are in places that you know. In a way, this is also augmented reality. So when you are actually in that physical location, we can change the gameplay a bit, and some things maybe work a bit differently. And in a way, we're augmenting the reality around you using the data that we get from maps as well as in our games. I think this is probably the most important part when making a location-based game. You need to kind of assume that the player understands nothing when they start playing the game. You shouldn't just throw them in a game and kind of assume that they realize that this is their physical location. The more game-like the world feels, the less kind of recognizable it becomes. And on the other hand, if we would be building a game on top of a Google Maps, probably everybody would realize that this is based on a location. But then again, it would be most likely a really boring game. I'm going to show an example how we kind of try to solve this problem. This is a comment from Playtest Cloud Tester. Probably the most obvious thing that comes to mind, trying to communicate location basedness in a game. We need to ask permission to use location data. Unfortunately, as people, we've been taught to basically just accept everything, every pop-out that comes up, and probably doesn't realize at all what they were doing. So this is a comment like, it's not a big deal, I usually accept that anyways. So at this point, probably the user has no idea yet that the game is location-based game. We try to concretize really clearly that we are looking for your location, and actually, surprise, surprise, the easiest way to communicate to the player that we know where you are is to tell them by text. So we utilize quite a lot like reverse geocoding in our games. So it basically means that we turn a GPS coordinates into text-based addresses. So the first thing we show to the player before we even show the game world is that, hey, this is the place where you are. This is Helsinki. That's Kaisaniemenkatu. That's actually where our office is located. And it's surprisingly immediately clear. We use reverse geocoding for a lot of stuff also in our game. It's really easy way to add more context in the game when the game world entities actually have physical addresses in the world, because people usually know streets and kind of familiar streets around them. This is the comment from the exact same tester, like 20 seconds after he just accepted the location permissions. Okay, so they found me even on the street I'm at, which is kind of scary. I think this shows perfectly that we were able to communicate the user that this is a location-based game. Being scared is a quite strong emotion. Obviously, we don't want to scare our users. For the big part of the users, that's like a wow effect. Hey, I'm actually on that street. And well, in some cases, obviously GPS and technology is a bit difficult. So in some cases, we get the street wrong. But in that case, also the comment is basically that, hey, I'm not on that street. But anyways, the message, I think, was delivered. This is a location-based game. This is a really long topic. I probably won't go too deep into this. Designing early game user experience is really hard, partly due to this all sorts of permissions and terms of services and privacy things that we kind of have to feed to the user, but also the gameplay experience, how it begins. It's basically, we have no control over it. It can be anything. The user can start the game on a train, on a bus, at home, at the couch, and we've been actually trying different kind of things, implementing tutorials and trying to teach the game as well as possible. And honestly, haven't really found a good solution yet. And it's one big part we're working on at the moment. Well, it's kind of obvious that we have no control of the world where the player is playing the game. Kind of true, kind of not. We obviously have control over the data that we put in the game, but that data can be very different for different players based on where they're playing the game. Here are a few screenshots from our testers. So, like I said, we're building a city building game. in a real world. So everything is basically, yeah, like I said, we have no control. The middle one picture here, it's actually from downtown Helsinki. City building games usually are using a grid-based structure when building the city. In there, it's really nicely grid-based, and yeah, it's going to be beautiful when you're building it. On the left-hand side, that is actually from Espoo in Otaniemi, the university campus area. We had a really eager tester there who was basically built the whole place full, and that kind of nicely shows how different it can be to a different player playing in a different location. And then there's the right-hand side where there's basically one tree. Having no control over the game world is a big issue, and what we've tried to do in this game is that we're basically limiting every action you're doing in the game. You have to be close to a road to be able to build in the game, and it has been kind of for us the key thing in our game. It's going to get a bit technical. I want to talk a bit about maps. I don't necessarily think that every location-based game needs a map, but they really help with kind of what I said about blending the game world and the real world. Kind of the only way at the moment. I don't think like AR technologies are quite there yet. So a bit about maps. Maps are full of information. If map has only a little information, it's basically a really bad map. So for a game, you really need to be careful and pick only the essential data from maps when you're building the game world. Here are actually, again, few screenshots. I don't know how visible they are, but I'm kind of trying to show. On the left-hand side, there's almost everything that we can get from the data source that we're using. It has way more roads, real-world buildings, all sorts of stuff. It kind of makes it immediately look less like a game. On the right-hand side is actual screenshot from the game. Obviously, it being a city builder, we don't want maybe the real-world buildings there. There's also some other stuff that we've done to make it not look like a map and really to look like a game, and we've really focused on that. So maps have lots of data. It's really tempting to use it all, but like try to have a real reason to include stuff in your game. I'm gonna quickly talk about concept called uncanny valley. It's a concept used when talking about robots that look very human-like and what kind of emotions that trigger in humans. So the more human-like a robot looks, the more weird for a human it feels. And in a way, the same thing happens when you're trying to generate game worlds from real-world data. The more accurate you try to make it, the more weird it really starts to look. This is maybe not the best example, but it's kind of trying to illustrate what happens. There's the small details start to mean maybe a bit too much. So when showing a game world from close to the ground, it gets really difficult to do it. So a bit higher up, it's easier. You can kind of ignore the small details and try to make it more game-like. So like a first-person shooter in a real city is not something that I would necessarily start implementing. And also the fact that like a lot of cities hardly work as cities, so it might be difficult to even then make a game, like a game level on them. This is a good thing to remember. Earth is not flat. I would really like it to be. It would make a lot of stuff a lot easier. This is a bit like a geek stuff for map projection nerds. But if you're making a location-based game, make sure that you understand what these are. And for the end of the presentation, this is the title we're working. Like I said, it's still in pretty closed beta test. And I would like to show a video, if technology allows. Yeah, that was it. Fairly short marketing video. I hope you got the idea. Yeah, thanks a lot. If you have any questions, I can show quickly. So there's a newsletter. You can also subscribe at our website if you're interested in when we're gonna release the game.
Are the individual cities entirely like self-contained, or is it like a shared world between players?
For now, they are contained. Everybody is building their own city. We started with a single-player experience first, but we will definitely be adding multiplayer. It's kind of a tricky thing for a city builder, but we have lots of ideas. We first want the single-player experience to work really well.
More questions? Yes. Thank you.
So in the early game experience, in the basic tutorials and so on, what are your thoughts on forcing the player to move around? Since I'm guessing that's a key component in the gameplay.
Forcing the player.
Yeah, so they can't complete all of the tutorials in one place.
Yeah, it's like I mentioned, I kind of had it on the slide, but kind of then figured out it's such a big topic that I probably better go through it quite quickly. But yeah, it's a really difficult problem to solve. And basically, if you look at current location-based games, kind of none of them try to teach you too much very early, and or basically teach you nothing, and kind of just throw you in the deep end and force you to learn the game by playing. But we really don't want to do that. We kind of, the first version that we did for the game was that we actually throw the player to a known location where they can kind of, in a sandbox environment, play the tutorial. But we're not necessarily sure that's a good thing, because that kind of breaks the feeling that, hey, now I'm in Helsinki when I start the game, and then we throw you in somewhere in Alaska or something, and it's just really confusing. So we somehow need to be able to make, let's say, tutorial very dynamic in the game.